Hello everybody, welcome to another session of neuro releases. We're going to do a quick little release this week. If you are on the newsletter, you know that my theme for this week and for tonight is releasing attachments, and we want to do that because our attachments are actually part of what keeps us limited. When we are attached to certain things, and I'll go over the two main kinds of attachment that we could be going through, it limits our scope, it limits our vision of what we consider to be possible, right? So the two main, if you are on the email list, this is going to be reviewed, but for those of you who are not on the email list, which by the way you can join by going onto the website, the two main reasons that we can be attached is attached to victimhood and therefore attached to the past, or we are attached to achievement and performing for affection and validation, and therefore always attached to the future. Both of these carry a weight into the present moment that you don't necessarily want. So today we're going to do a quick little release. It is up to you what you are releasing. As every Thursday where we do a regular release, the topic of the release and what you're releasing is completely up to you. The process remains the same. I'm going to talk about attachment, and I'm going to talk about both the idea of being attached to your victimhood and how that can be empowering to you. And also I'm going to talk about being attached to being very results driven in life and always needing to achieve the next best thing. So if you're ready, if you have your pen and paper handy and ready, let's take a moment now and set an intention of what you want to release. And then we are just going to go through the process, which at this point I think you all know well. If you don't, there is a video of back to basics on how to do a proper release step by step. I'm not going to go through that every week, but if you have any questions in the meantime, you can always, of course, put them in the chat and I'll answer them as we go along. So take a moment, close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and let's set an intention of what we're going to release with this work today. Once you bring it top of mind, let your mind race and let it give you all the associations and the words you're going to need. As the words accumulate in your mind, become aware of any sensations in your body. We are releasing these sensations. If it helps, visualize bringing that energy into your dominant hand, using a cord, using a rope, using whatever imagery you like. Feel yourself bringing the thoughts and the sensations in your body into your hand. Let's make sure we're taking deep belly breaths, long inhales, longer, slow exhales. This is the way we signal to the body that we are safe, with long exhales. Okay? And when you're ready, open your eyes hold the sensation in your hand. And when you're ready, let's just release it onto paper. Take a deep breath in and release it onto paper. And there you have it. So, as always, the first thing we want to do is we want to round this with itself. This is not going to let me use the thin part because it makes it too... So, next week is our full moon. We just had a new moon in Aquarius, and next week is going to be our full moon. And we're going into the sign of Virgo. And in preparation of letting go of that which no longer serves us next week, and in continuation of setting the intention of being our most limit-breaking, awesome version of ourselves, the most visionary, the most rebellious version of ourselves in honor of Aquarius, the most progressive version of ourselves. I thought we can talk about letting go of attachment. Because our attachments in life actually impact the way we live and the way that we experience ourselves a lot more than we realize. We are willing to let go of a lot because of our attachment sometimes. And there's two types of attachment which are very common, and yet they don't produce very favorable results. People who are practicing them aren't exactly having the best experience, lived experience of their life. One is attachment to victimhood. And this might sound strange because when we think of victimhood, we think that nobody wants to be the victim. And it's true, a lot of the people who are attached to their victimhood will say that they don't want to be attached to it, that they don't want to be a victim, or they don't even consider themselves to be a victim. And yet when they start to speak about their life and about their lived experiences and things like that, it is always about the past and how someone else is responsible for how they are in the situation that they are. Now, as disempowering as this is, to keep blaming someone else, psychologically it's actually quite empowering, because it takes the responsibility of you changing your life away from you and puts it on someone else. The thinking is, as long as I feel the way I do about a certain situation, a certain person, a certain event, as long as that feeling is there, as long as that's there, I cannot be happy. So it takes away the onus of you having to, because that's never going to happen, we can't change the events of the past. And by putting the onus on someone else, recognizing their mistake or apologizing or atoning for it or whatever it may be. Hello, hello. Thank you, darling. But whatever it may be, that victimhood that we are in, it's actually, it takes away the responsibility of us having to be different. of us having to try. Add to this any level of fear of failure, and we are more than happy to stay in our victimhood and in our victim state. And so we get attached to our victim stories. Anytime anybody tries to tell us to see the situation a little bit differently, or to let go, or we become defensive, we tell them they don't understand. How could they even possibly suggest such a thing? Don't you know what was done to me? Don't you understand the amount of pain I've been through? Yet we always have a choice. The life we end up experiencing is the one we make for ourselves. We are nothing as human beings but storytellers. Our brain knows a bunch of stories and a bunch of labels, and whatever it sees or hears or feels from the environment around it, it fits into a story it has read before. It can learn new stories, but that's energy consuming. So it would like to revert back to old behavior, to old stories, to old patterns. But most of us haven't had the best patterns programmed into us by well-wishers, like our parents or society, or we all have some level of trauma. We all have something that we are dealing with. But if you're willing to let go of your attachment to your victimhood, then you're going to open yourself up as a superpower and as a super attractor. Then you'll attract to yourself what it is that you really want, not all of those things you don't want. Now, the second kind of attachment that kind of goes hand in hand with attachment to victimhood, the other reaction to having been hurt is to go to the opposite end of the spectrum and become ultra responsible and become somebody that is very attached to outcomes and favorable outcomes. Right? If we always need to be progressing, if we always need to be doing the next best thing, if we always expect ourselves and those people around us to be at their peak level and peak performance, this is another kind of attachment that leaves people burnt out and unhappy and stressed out in the long run. We don't need to prove our worth. We don't need to have output in order to be valuable. We are valuable by the miracle of the fact that we are sentient, living, breathing creatures. That is extremely rare in this universe. And that is a tremendous gift, and that has tremendous value. We seem to be forgetting that in our societies, in our lives. People are valuable for the sake of being people, for being alive, for being unique. And yet we have been raised, we have been taught that unless we produce something for society, for our relationships, for whatever, that we don't have value. Look at the definition of health in Western societies, and to a great extent Eastern societies now. They will tell you that any symptom falls on a bell curve and is considered normal unless and until it interferes with your keeping a 9-to-5 job. The moment you say that my symptoms, my pain, my depression, my whatever is bad enough that I can't go to work, then they start giving you something to create a band-aid for that so that it's tolerable enough so you can return back to work. It's not about giving you health. It's not about keeping the organism in the best homeostasis status that it can get. It's just keep the worker bees alive. So our society doesn't always care. Very seldom does society care about the well-being of individuals. And so it's our own responsibility to do this. Inherent in this idea of always needing to achieve the next best thing is the need for external validation, is for society to look at you and say, you're doing so well. Look at everything you've accumulated. Look at everything you've achieved. Hooray. And yet, all the people in the world being happy with you and being proud of you and wanting to be you isn't going to make you satisfied and happy. We have many a celebrity death, tragic celebrity death, to attest for that. Happiness comes from inside of you and only you. And only you know how to achieve that. But a lot of the times we don't give ourselves the time for that. You know, I've had a lot of comments about the art that I share and the classes that I teach. And when I tell people it's a 3-hour class, a lot of the time I get told, well, that's a lot of time to be sitting there doing art or doing nothing. But 3 hours out of your week is too much for you to dedicate to your own mental health? When you say you don't have time for something, all you're saying is it's not a priority. So if you don't have time for yourself, and I don't care what it is, I don't care if it's doing art, I don't care if it's going to the gym or going to the choir, something that brings you joy. If you don't have 3 hours out of your week to spend on your own well-being, what is the quality of your life? You have one life to live. Who are you living it for? And if you tell me I'm living it for my family and my kids, if you don't take care of yourself well, how can you take care of them well at all? Anyway, that was very quick. I told you this session is going to be very, very quick. So once we have rounded our first expression, we're going to start dissolving it. So all I was trying to say is being attached either to your past and being attached to your victimhood, or always being attached to having to achieve something in order to find yourself acceptable and to find yourself lovable and worthy, are both defense mechanisms to unhealed trauma, to unhealed wounds. And no amount of being acknowledged as the victim or the workhorse is going to make that internal pain go away. The only thing that it's going to do that is you. You have to be willing to open up certain wounds and recreate a new association and a new story around the events of the past and about what it is that you really want for the future. I love this quote by Clint Eastwood. He says, "The older I get, the more I realize it is okay for me to live a life other people don't understand." I love that. Sorry, everybody, that was loud. So, we usually say we don't want to create loops in neurographic art, right? Sometimes it happens. Sometimes as your pen goes where it is not expected, it loops around itself. So if you ever find that you have loops in your neurographic art, all you need to do is dissolve them. And now it's not a loop anymore. You always want to make sure that there's entrances and exits from every shape. These are lines that represent energy, so we don't want to trap the energy going round and round around itself. That's what gives things gravity, spinning around themselves. That's what gives the earth its gravity, or the sun its gravity, or the moon. It's anything that has gravitational pull, including the nucleus of an atom or the electrons or whatever. It doesn't matter how big or how small. If they're in a place where they have gravity, it's because they're spinning around themselves. Emotions are the same way. If your emotions are in your body and in your mind and in your heart spinning around themselves, they're going to get heavy. They create weight. In fact, this is what alchemy is. Alchemy is the process of taking the lead of hurt and pain in your heart and releasing it back into gold. Transmuting it and changing it. So instead of it being something heavy that only weighs you down and stops certain frequencies from getting to you, because that's what lead does, right? We use lead in science in order to protect from radiation, because it's very difficult for those particles to get through lead. Pain is the same way. The lead in your heart is the same way. It makes it very hard for the frequency of love and acceptance and non-judgment to penetrate through, because that lead is there to stop it. The process of healing, the process of alchemy, is the process of transforming our pain into that gold, into something that attracts. It's a good conductor. And for me, these releases are part of that process. When I put something heavy down onto paper, spend some time with it, bringing it peace, bringing myself peace, knowing that I have expressed how I feel. Even if no one else could hear it or understand it, it doesn't matter. And in the end, creating something beautiful with it. The fact that I get to visually see that with each release has really, really changed my life and my perspective. Upstairs needs to go out. You have to wait, sweetheart. You have to wait. You have to wait. Seems very Valentine themed today. Hearts all over the place. So when I say that what I do is Neurographica inspired and not actual Neurographica, this is one of those instances. What I just did by creating 3 different islands for this person, face, body, leg, I've created 3 little islands. If this was proper Neurographica, this would never be allowed. We can't create islands. So Neurographica is all about a very specific process that you follow. I'm not always that exact with the process because sometimes I find it very limiting. And so I'm very much inspired by that art form, but I don't practice it exactly. Once you have your colored image and the message inside, whatever that may be for you, you are done with the release this week. Next week is going to be our release for the full moon in Virgo. And since Virgo is the perfectionist of the zodiac, we're going to be talking about all about perfection and perfectionism. If you want the newsletter that goes along with that, make sure you go onto my website and subscribe to the newsletter so that you can get all the literature before the class and also reminders of when we're going to do our next session. But today was short and sweet. We did a very simple release, and we will be back again next week when we are going to do another session of releases together. So I hope you have a lovely, lovely weekend. If you have any questions about anything, let me know. You all know where to find me. Comment here, send me an email. Don't forget to like and subscribe, please and thank you. And I will see you all next week.